All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome in this Friday episode of GC live here at Steel Hands Vista. Chris, we got a crowd rolling in already. Great spot to come out today as South Carolina gets rolling with the Final Four. We're, of course, going to talk about that, preview the game, South Carolina versus Texas women's basketball, Part 4 at the Final Four. Of course, you've got UConn and UCLA playing right after that, and we'll find out who's going to play for a championship. We got Jack Veltri, who is going to join us actually live. I believe he is on the road right now to Starkville. He pointed out, Chris, the last time he made the trip to Starkville, do you remember the men's basketball game there?
Yes.
It's like a 35-point loss, I think. Yeah. So hopefully better outcome, hopefully a more competitive outcome at least for South Carolina as they go try to get an SEC series victory at Mississippi State. And then, of course, spring football rolling right along. We're going to have our takes on that as well. So guests on the show today would be Jack talking baseball. And then actually I believe we're going to have Chris Wellbaum live from Tampa. He's down there for the Final Four, bringing some coverage. We're going to have him on as a guest at about 2:45 Eastern if you are watching this show live. Otherwise, of course, we appreciate you joining us on all the podcast platforms. If you ever miss a show, they will always be posted as an audio form on every podcast platform, basically, that exists. As always, we are presented by our guy, Clint Hammond, CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Chris, we got to start with Final Four, man. I want to just say, who am I? Not that I am someone to tell everyone what to do, but let me just say, 5 straight Final Fours. Yeah. It is not normal. That is not normal at all. I'm just going to encourage everybody out there to enjoy this while we have it. It's fun to have your team still in it. And once again, it's down to 4 teams. Just think about that. Literally, of all the teams that play college basketball, there's 4 left, and your team has been one of those teams for 5 straight years. Before we get into the game itself, that's something that's worth applauding.
It is. It's something to enjoy. And especially, man, when you think about when Dawn Staley got here, this wasn't a blue blood program, right? This was a program that had only some fleeting, every now and then successes as far as getting into the tournament, certainly not going out and winning championships. I mean, anybody who was at the arena in the early days of the Dawn Staley tenure, there was nobody there. And even with her, they did not win a lot of games at the beginning. So to see what they've done now, what she's been able to do in terms of building this program's been fantastic. And what should be fun about this is, this isn't just a Cinderella run to the Final Four, right? Those expectations actually mean that if they lose tonight, or if they lose in the championship game, if they win tonight, there are going to be some people angry. There will be overreactions. Shake up this, shake up that, right? Again, to go back to your point, not normal to make 5 straight Final Fours, not normal to win 3 national titles in the span of a few years like Dawn's done. So enjoy it. All the teams that are still in this thing are very, very capable. Whoever plays the best is going to end up earning this thing.
Yeah, that's what stands out to me. I feel like the last few years, there was maybe 2 teams. I mean, obviously from a big picture sports world thing, of course anybody can win every game, any game. But just from a percentage-wise standpoint, I felt like, last year it was probably going to be South Carolina or Iowa. The year before, I guess there were 3 teams there that could probably win it because that would have been when LSU won it, right? So I felt like all 4 of these teams could win it. And then throughout the year, I would have thrown in, a Notre Dame, certainly Southern Cal before Juju got hurt, put them in there easily. So, you've got a little bit more parity at the top in terms of the number of elite teams that exist in women's basketball for this season. And so I think that makes it all the more impressive that Carolina is where they are. And so we'll dive into specifics of this game a little bit later on when we have Wellbaum on, because he can speak to that stuff a little bit better, a little bit more. But the thing, and I want to encourage everybody, go check out our content on GamecockCentral.com. Got a lot of great stuff from Chris Wellbaum. Again, he's down there. And Markeisha Grant, former Gamecock guard who played under Dawn Staley for a couple of years. She's got her preview up as well. Does a great job of giving insight of what it's like being on the floor with the team. And, it's always weird to me when you play a team in any sport for the fourth time. And obviously, as we know, South Carolina has proven they can beat Texas. They've done it twice. Texas has also proven they are capable of beating South Carolina. And it's an interesting matchup every time because Texas is one of those teams, at least in the matchup Texas won. They were able to kind of show that South Carolina doesn't quite have that elite person at the 5, like that we think of as being Dawn Staley's traditional center. And so that has been a part of these games. At times, though, South Carolina has out-rebounded Texas. That was a point Markeisha made the last 2 games when South Carolina won, or the 2 games that they won, the last one and then the first one.
Yeah.
They out-rebounded Texas. So I think in addition to slowing down Madison Booker, which is always going to be a key, you got to look at, can you out-rebound a team that is really, really good in that category?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this team and how it's constructed, you always have the potential for just a massive, unexpected upset, but that has not happened, right, to South Carolina this year. It's been really good teams that have beaten them, and I think there's a good argument that, a couple of those teams are constructed in a way that specifically can counter South Carolina, right? You've got Texas with Taylor Jones, Kyla Oldacre, who I think, Wes, in that one of the games against South Carolina, she had like 16 rebounds. That might have even been the game they lost, right? Really good on the offensive glass. They've got Booker, Rory Harmon, really good at point guard. They have a unique style. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They're in some ways like some of the teams that Dawn Staley's had, in the past, before the past couple years. Don't take a lot of threes, don't make a lot of threes, but they're really good inside. They rebound, they defensive and offensive rebound, and they're really good in the mid-range game with Harmon and with Madison Booker. So they have a unique construction. UCLA has a unique construction. UConn's just great talent, very well coached. And those are 3 of the teams that have taken South Carolina down. So fascinating matchup in part 4. I think you brought up a great point on the radio earlier on the game. Do either of these teams come out with something different? I don't know what that is. New offensive set, some type of new strategy, new defense that you throw at somebody. They've played 3 times. These teams are very familiar with each other, and Dawn Staley and Vic Schaefer from Texas are very, very familiar with each other too.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, we're going to try to go out to Jack Veltri. He says he needs us to send the link to him to his phone. So
we'll do that.
So we're coming your way, Jack. Again, Jack on the way to Starkville right now. And interesting matchup for South Carolina. And I'm going to be honest, I've not dove much into Mississippi State and what they have going on at all. But I do know the schedule lets up just a little bit, if that's possible, in SEC play compared to playing just the elite of the elite of the elite, which is what Carolina has faced recently. When you look, of course, you had North Carolina in the midweek, and you had these games with Texas, with Tennessee, and just it's tough. It's tough. So we're going to go out now to Jack. I think he's going to be audio only. We're going to bear with Jack here. But, Jack, do we have you loud and clear, man?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We got you, man. Jack, how close are you to Stark Vegas right now?
I think I'm 3 hours out. So I got on the road around like 9 this morning, and then it's been a lot of driving today, but definitely a long trip getting over to Mississippi.
Well, hopefully no. I'm sorry if there's any Mississippi State fans in here that might catch a stray, but Starkville, aptly named. Not the mecca or the pinnacle of things that are happening. But Jack, you find something cool to do there last time you were there? Do you have anything on your list?
Let's see. There was a really cool bar, and I think it has some connection to the baseball program there. It's called Hobie's. Really nice hole-in-the-wall type of bar that I found last time. It's a good spot. I'll probably go back this time. But, yeah, you're right. There's really not a ton to do out in Starkville, but maybe since I'll be there for a few more days this time, I'll find something different.
Jack, this South Carolina team is in, I don't know, do we call it dire need of a series win? And before you came on, Wes was just making a good point. I mean, the schedule, when you play the SEC schedule that South Carolina does, it does not relent that much because for the most part, every single team that you play is capable of beating you. Even if you're a really, really good program, even if you're playing kind of a lower tier team in the league, right? And I think we've seen that. Actually, you can make a good argument in reverse for South Carolina. Right now, the record says they're lower tier, but they've given Tennessee, for example, Oklahoma, really, really good series, really competitive games. They just haven't come out on the winning side. So, I don't profess to know a ton about Mississippi State. My thought is that this is a more winnable series for South Carolina, even though it's a road series, than Tennessee, than Oklahoma, certainly than Arkansas. What are your thoughts on how Carolina matches up this weekend?
This is going to be a very interesting series in that Mississippi State they're kind of like South Carolina in a lot of ways. They're 1-8 in conference play. They've had a lot of tough games. I mean, you look at their schedule, there's a lot of games on there against LSU and Texas and Oklahoma that you can say, all right, if they got one more hit or they got out of a jam, they're probably winning these games. And so I don't think the record necessarily reflects what this team is because they're very good. They have a good pitching staff. Their Friday night guy is unbelievable. I think he's got 61 strikeouts and 7 walks from looking it up the other day. And then their offense is hitting 300. So they've got a good team. Obviously, I know it's tough times right now. I know Mississippi State fans seemingly want their head coach, Chris Lemonis, to be fired just because they've kind of not fallen off a cliff, but they're not what they were back in 2021 when they were at the top of college baseball. So times have been hard out there, and I'm sure if South Carolina wins tonight, it's only going to be more gas to the fire, I guess you will, more flames happening there. But I do think South Carolina matches up relatively well, but it is just tough going on the road in the SEC and expecting to win a series, and we'll see what happens. But I do think South Carolina, when they're playing the way they have been lately, I know it hasn't been pretty. I know the wins haven't come, but the way they played against Tennessee, the way they played against Oklahoma, I mean, you take out the Arkansas series, there's a good chance they had 3-4 wins in there that they just couldn't get. So we'll see what happens this weekend, but I think it is a pretty evenly matched series to where it wouldn't shock me if they come out of here with a road series win.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jack. We know what South Carolina looks like right now when they are facing the elite of the elite. And, I think when it comes to the matchups, it's just a tough matchup for South Carolina facing the elite of the elite. I think what we're going to start to find out and what hopefully for that program and hopefully for Gamecock fans is a little bit better answer is how do they match up when they face kind of more along the lines of a top 25 type team as opposed to a top 5 type team. And so, Jack, one thing I've noticed is that Maneri, he's going to keep tinkering. He's going to keep tweaking until he finds what he believes is an answer. And so lots of changes, obviously changes to the rotation last week and then changes to the lineup this past week. Let's start with the lineup. I know you wrote about it on Gamecock Central this week, Jack, but what can you tell us, maybe for those who didn't see it, tell us about what some of those changes were, and then two, kind of just your thoughts and on the reasons there.
So in case you guys missed it on Tuesday against Presbyterian, Paul Maneri ran out a pretty different looking lineup. And that's going to happen for midweek games, but he moved Nathan Hall from the leadoff spot to the 3-hole in the order, and then Ethan Petrie batting cleanup. Now, for context, they have been hitting behind each other, I believe, since the North Carolina game a week and a half ago. So they've been hitting 1-2 in the order, but now they've been bumped down to 3-4. And the idea behind that is, they're your best hitters, right? And when they're hitting, typically they're leading off the game and runners aren't always on base and they're not scoring a lot of runs. So the idea is move them down a few spots in the lineup. Hopefully you got runners on base when these guys come up to bat, and then hopefully you get the same results that you have been lately. And I think it worked well on Tuesday because they both had 2 hits. They both drove in a pair of runs. Ethan obviously hit a home run, his 52nd career bomb to give South Carolina the lead for good in that game. And I think that's all well. The other thing is, and Maneri mentioned this to me the other day when I was talking to him, they have to find guys that are going to be able to lead off and hit second ahead of these 2 guys because you need guys that are getting on base. And I pitched a few guys to him. I'm like, well, what about Jordan Carrion? He's a guy that's been hitting the ball all over the field this year. He gets on base. He does everything you want in a ball player. The one thing Maneri mentioned is that he doesn't hit for a ton of power. And so that leads me to believe, okay, well, if it's not just about a guy who gets on base, if you want a guy that's going to hit for a little bit of pop, I mean, what about a guy like, just throwing names out here, what about a guy like Bo Hollins who, is a switch hitter for one, and he's also got a very nice swing that he can hit line drives, he can get on base. I think he's getting on base at like a 400 clip this season, I think. And then, he hits for a little bit of power too, but also you could go with a guy like KJ Scobie potentially. He gets on base too, but also can spray the ball all over the field. So it's going to be interesting to see what they run out tonight. Again, they could purely go based on guys that just get on base. But since Maneri mentioned that Carrion doesn't have a ton of power, and that's why he doesn't want to put him at the top of the lineup potentially, that it just makes things a little bit more, curious, I would say, as to what they're going to do moving forward.
Jack, you wrote, I thought, a pretty insightful piece on Gamecock Central, so shameless plug, go check it out under the baseball tab. And bigger picture question here, but obviously this weekend is going to go a long way towards determining the ultimate answer to this question, yes or no. But you wrote, can South Carolina stage a midseason turnaround? 26 games left, I think. And you actually had some of the historical data that you went and pulled. So short version, what's the answer? Can they? What's the history show?
So there's always a chance, right? There's 26 games to go. You would need to go 12-9 in your final 21 games of conference play to get to 13 wins. And why 13 wins? Why so specific? Well, for one, you go back to last year, South Carolina in the final year, Mark Kingston didn't have a great year, but they won enough conference games to get into the postseason as a 2 seed. And I believe since 2015, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it's recent history, but there's never been an SEC team that's been left out of the postseason when they win 13 conference games and they have a top 30 RPI. So South Carolina right now, the last time I checked, they have the 36th best RPI. So they're right on the bubble there. And in terms of the games they have coming up, yes, they played some really tough teams so far and lost, but there's still a lot of opportunities to where you're playing an SEC schedule. As long as you can get to about 13 wins, you will get into the tournament, most likely. They've never left anyone out before with that kind of mark. I wouldn't say that's the case. I wouldn't say that would happen this year. But also, 12 wins even might get you into the tournament. But there's only been one team since 2015 that's gotten in with 12 wins in SEC play. That was 2021 Alabama. And then on top of all that, I know there are a lot of numbers out there and stuff, but if there's ever going to be a coach that can kind of help get this team turned around, I really do think it is Paul Maneri. For the criticisms that he does get for the Game 7 of the World Series comment and stuff, and just being old and all that, he's been there, done that. And you look back at his track record, the year after LSU won the title in 2009, they went on a 7-game losing streak, and then another 6-game losing streak, kind of in May, I believe. And then they went on to win the SEC tournament and automatically made the NCAA tournament. And then you go back to 2021, the same year that I said Alabama was the only team to make it with 12 wins in conference play. LSU started out 1-8 that season. And as the year went on, they became the only team since 2010 from the SEC to make the NCAA tournament after starting 1-8. And they finished with 13 wins. So you really do want to get to that 13-win mark. It's tough, but it is doable because the schedule, as you guys kind of alluded to, really does lighten up. It doesn't lighten up completely, but you're not playing Arkansas, Tennessee, Clemson, Oklahoma ever again this season. So April's really your month to turn around because you got Mississippi State, A&M, Kentucky, and Ole Miss. And I think 3 of those series right there are definitely winnable, and those all come on the road. and then you have the Ole Miss series at home in the middle of the month. So a lot of opportunity here to catch fire is kind of the point.
Jack, before we let you get out of here, man, wanted to get your thoughts on women's basketball. Of course, Final Four, another matchup with Texas, fourth time this year. We've got Wellbaum on to kind of break it down a little bit more. But any general thoughts on this weekend and South Carolina's quest for a repeat?
I think it's going to be really tough to repeat, but I think it is very much in the cards. You know, how often do you get to play three teams? Like the three opponents you could be playing in the next two games. Obviously, you got Texas tonight, but I mean, UCLA and UConn have already beaten South Carolina this year, and so has Texas. So I can't remember the last time anything like that has really happened. And it goes back to what Dawn Staley has done with her scheduling and stuff. And I feel like the team that South Carolina was when they lost these games, obviously I don't think they're the same now because they already proved that against Texas, winning the SEC championship game against them. And so they face the Longhorns tonight. I know you guys were talking about it a little bit before I hopped on, but I do wonder, I think it was Chris maybe that brought it up, like what adjustments do we see in this game from both teams? Because they're so familiar with each other. And Dawn has obviously owned Vic Schaefer in the postseason. And so I do think South Carolina is going to win this game tonight. We'll see how it goes and how the score is. I think it'll be a close-knit battle, but I just think South Carolina is just a far superior team. And then you have the national championship game if they get there ultimately. And that's going to be much tougher just because we've seen what happened with the UConn game, obviously, and then going back to like November when UCLA played South Carolina. But again, this is in Tampa. It should be a good Gamecock crowd, I would imagine. And then we'll see, man. I think it is very much possible, though, for them to win the national championship. But at least for tonight, I will pick South Carolina to win.
All right, Jack, we'll let you get back to it, man. I know you got about 3 hours left, so hopefully this gave you a good 10 minutes to think about something else other than driving. Get back on your music and podcast, man. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
All right, that's Jack Beltry, of course, South Carolina, or Gamecock Central beat writer across multiple sports, baseball being one of those. Be sure to check out all of Jack's coverage on GamecockCentral.com throughout the weekend. Again, hopefully that goes better than last time. We're going to stop sending Jack to Starkville if it doesn't. So shout out, Jack. Be sure to check that out. Chris, tell you what, man, before we forget, I want to get into some football. So let's go ahead. Let's tell everybody out there. I would say with a big tournament coming up, this is a good time to tell everybody about one of our new friends with Palmetto Golf and Belts.
That's right, PalmettoGolfing.com. There is a big tournament not far down the road, Wes, coming up. So if you are now in the mood for golf, it is fully in season. And if you need some new gear, go check out our friend Brandon's online store at PalmettoGolfing.com. Palmetto Golf and Belts, custom golf gloves, custom golf tees, golf towels, outstanding stuff that he has in the shop, Wes. He also has really cool needlepoint belts. So if you're like, man, I'm not really a golfer, I don't need anything golf related, that's totally fine. Go check out PalmettoGolfing.com. Get yourself a great needlepoint belt. A lot of those things, Wes, I don't know if you've ever looked in the stores at those things or online. They're really expensive. These are extremely well made, and they are a lot more affordable than a lot of the other options you'll see out there. He's got cross designs. He's got South Carolina colors. He's got the Palmetto Tree logo designs on all of his gear. So, again, golf towels, golf tees, golf gloves, and also needlepoint belts for golfing or for everyday use. Go check those out at PalmettoGolfing.com. Big South Carolina fan, big supporter of GamecockCentral.com.
Yeah, certainly shout out to him. Appreciate his support. Y'all go support his work as well. Chris, let's talk some football, man.
Let's do it.
Some players speaking this week, Beamer speaking this week, and we did get to watch a little bit more of practice. 6 segments on it's all running together. That was Thursday. We were out there, and then of course Beamer spoke, some assistants. We're kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of spring ball. 2 weeks away actually from the spring game, and I think this week is about kind of starting to see some storylines emerge. Mostly stuff we've already kind of been talking about. And then, earlier this week, man, the injuries I thought were a big storyline for this week. Kind of the first two somewhat big injuries, you would say, with Nick Sharp and Jaylen Brown both being out for the spring. Now, we don't know exactly what that means for those guys after the spring. That was something that Beamer really did not specify one way or the other, so we won't speculate there. But certainly, in terms of Nick Sharp, someone that was projected to, I would say, be a starter. Beamer and the staff would probably say competing to be a starter officially, but certainly had a great chance to possibly be a starter. I think let's kind of talk about, though, what that means in terms of opportunities for other guys. Obviously, Tree Babalade, who we've talked about, playing some guard, playing some left guard. I think that if you were starting a team right now, starting a season right now, Tree probably rolls right in there with the ones. But also, I think worth mentioning a guy in Shed Surratt, who is a freshman offensive lineman that we've heard some good buzz about as well.
Yeah, and Wes, do we see it? We don't know the answer to this. It just kind of came top of mind. I mean, RJ Newsom's played a lot of guard in college. So if you needed, could you move him over? You could. So, yeah, they've been happy with Shed. He's obviously a true freshman. And so Tree is someone that I think we all really had our eye on going into this spring for a couple reasons. Number one, he's, 1 year older, seems healthy, right? But we also knew that he was going to be repping potentially at both guard and tackle. And so now with Sharp down, at least for the spring, we'll, again, see where that goes long term. That really kind of locks that in with Tree Babalade. And our understanding is he's been getting a lot of the first team reps at that left guard spot that Sharp's already been working at. So, Tree's a guy that, man, when he's played well from everything we've seen and heard. And so excited, for him, honestly, to get that opportunity, even though you never want to see it come because of an injury. I anticipated that competition would continue going. And whenever Nick Sharp gets back, if he does indeed come back at some point, he'll probably be in there competing as well.
Yeah, no doubt. On the other side, man, I tend to think, obviously, we know Dylan Stewart is going to be a starter at edge. And then on the other side, I think I personally believe it's going to take a lot for somebody to unseat Brian Thomas Jr. just because he has the trust of the staff. We know that. He's earned a spot. And, I think the question coming in, though, was, all right, is there a younger guy who can kind of take that leap and either take BT's spot or push BT, or at, a different way to say it, just maybe, hey, that's our next guy up. Yeah. That's the guy. We know how much they wanted to rotate last year. So I would have had, and still do if he's back and healthy, Jaylen Brown firmly in that conversation. But now, is it a JT Gear? Can he take another step forward? Is it, a Deju? Can he take a step forward? Is it a Quay Dodd? Is it one of these freshmen that just steps in, Anthony Addison, and says, hey, I'm ready to play, guys? And, I think that's going to be a situation where if you're Carolina, you're certainly cognizant of, hey, we felt really good about edge, probably 3 or 4 deep last year. You're maybe at this point not quite as deep. So what does that look like the final half of spring? And then, I don't know, do you keep your eyes open in the spring transfer portal window for a potential edge guy as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get to a point regardless, like put Jaylen in that mix or have him out of the mix. You can probably get to the point where you feel better about it. Not that the staff feels bad. You're starting from a point of having one of the best pass rushers in the country as one of your starters, right? So that's a good starting point. You've got BT who, is, I think, poised to potentially take another step forward and has done some really good things already for this team. And you have some other talent, but there are some questions. You don't walk into this thing feeling, kind of like you did with defensive tackle last year, where you feel like, all right, we've got 4 to 6 guys that you roll out there and feel really good about that. You probably don't feel that way about edge this year. Can you get there? Maybe. And how? That's probably the bigger question. Can they? How did they get there? Do they keep their eye open in the portal? Maybe. We know they will at defensive tackle for similar reasons. But is it just more of another guy or two already on the roster continuing to make strides through spring, summer, and preseason? I think we lose that a little bit in football, which is such a developmental game. What you are on day one of spring does not have to be what you are when they kick it off against Virginia Tech.
A little bit of news coming out yesterday, right? Wendell Gregory.
Yep.
Entering the portal. Now, technically, he cannot enter the portal yet, but making it known, basically. We see this now, unless you're, if you're a graduate, I guess you can still just go in at any time. But, for younger guys, you see this now. Hey, I'm just going to make it known already. I'm going in the portal. Then once you can officially go in, he will be going in. And, I saw some responses, some reactions, Chris, of, hey, is there something I'm missing here? What's up here? Gregory, highly recruited guy. By all indications, a good dude. Like, I always enjoyed interacting with him as a recruit. I had very high hopes for him. I thought when you kind of started to look ahead 2-3 years when he was being recruited, I was going 2025, maybe that's a guy firmly in the mix at linebacker.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, just it appears it wasn't going to work out at linebacker because they quickly, Chris, moved him to edge. Yeah. And that was last year. They went ahead and moved him. I mean, I think the writing was on the wall about him playing linebacker with that move, because if they had thought there was a chance, I don't think you move him out of linebacker knowing how many guys you were losing this year,
lost,
you know?
Yeah, there was that one point in his career where he got moved to edge, and you kind of go, all right, they were a little light at that time in the room, and you go, is this just a filler? And I think maybe he even went back and forth a little bit. But like you said, moved to that room full time. And a guy that has kind of interesting size, Wes, and that, interesting skill set, did a lot in high school. And I think at last I saw about listed at least, that can be a little bit misleading, 6'3", 245. So when you look at him in that edge room, he certainly looked bigger than he was when he was in the linebacker room, but still looked a little bit more like a big linebacker, right? So, even though Carolina has some questions at both edge and linebacker, naturally you would go, okay, well, they need somebody to step up at edge. How about Wendell Gregory, right? And that's fair if you thought that. But the information we got just seemed like it didn't really look as much in the cards this year in 2025 for him to play. And players have that right now. Go find somewhere maybe you can play a little earlier.
Yeah, so I don't really think this one is that. I don't think there's
nefarious.
Some deep. Yeah, there's no deep meaning here.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity, in my opinion, from what we've kind of heard, putting some pieces together for him to go play. I tell you, man, there's not a ton you can glean from being out there at practice for those 6 segments, but there always are little things you notice. And one thing Beamer was talking about this week was quarterback battle in terms of QB2. This time last year, they were still kind of in search for QB1. I think we all, at least we all kind of knew it was going to end up being Lenoris. But this year, who QB1 is. You're trying to figure out who QB2 is. And I think in a similar light, many of us, you think an Aaron Nolan's coming in with a great shot to be the backup. I still think a pretty decent chance that ends up being the case. But it is an interesting battle at this point. I think there's maybe been not as much made about Luke Doty being in the room as maybe there should be.
Yeah.
And then being out there, man, another just tiny example of what we mean or what people mean when they tell us, hey, Cutter Woods, that guy carries himself the right way. Did you notice how when everybody else was doing their reps, he was taking reps against air, like on his own? So other quarterbacks, he was in the drill, so it's a rotation, right? They're throwing routes to receivers on air. And so Cutter would do his rep, but then he'd get to the back of the line. Let's say Dante's doing his rep. Cutter is taking his drop, putting his eyes on the receiver, and then mimicking the throw, just taking those little mental reps, which is something anybody can do, but I don't really know that you see it to that extent at a practice. So that kind of just caught my eye, caught my attention as a little anecdote of what people are probably saying or meaning when they say that.
Yeah, like I've talked to so many people that bring up the word intangibles with them, almost to the point where it's like that's actually tangible because there's so many different things you're talking about.
Yeah.
But he just carries the way he carries himself Great personality, loves to work, but like he just he's kind of got that it factor a little bit about him. So, and man, I'm with you on the Doty thing. Just gotta say, I feel like people are glossing that over a little bit. The good news for this team is you don't play tomorrow.
Yep.
You play in several months. But I can't shake the feeling of like if you needed a QB2 right now, where do you think you're going? And there's a lot more. I've made the point earlier. It's a developmental game. So Air Nolan, Cutter, Dante Reno, they've got a lot more time to continue developing. But you got Luke Doty chilling in the room. As someone, Air Nolan told me, I got to talk to him yesterday. He said Luke's been huge for him as a guy that's been around, knows what's going on, knows the ropes. And Wes has played and started for South Carolina at that position.
People forget he threw for 1,500. He's thrown for 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, I think, 8 picks, completed about 60% of his passes. I mean, in today's world, dude, when it is hard to get backup quarterbacks, that's not a bad thing to have in that room. And then to Aaron Nolan's point, just having him in there as a resource to the other guys. I don't want to speak for Luke and say he's going to be a coach after his playing days, but certainly we've heard enough to know if that's what he wants to pursue. And I do think that's something he is and will consider. I mean, a great opportunity for Luke to kind of be around some young guys and kind of go ahead and I guess see what that side of it is like, because you got some young guys looking up to you. I think Wellbaum is ready. We're going to go out to him here shortly. Chris Wellbaum, who is live from Tampa at the Final Four. But while Chris is doing that, we'll close out our football thoughts here. And kind of broken record alert, guys. But the other thing that just caught my eye is watching these young wide receivers. I think there is a sense of, with the wide receivers, they've kind of dominated the conversation a little bit in terms of winter workouts, and then in terms of us being out there, Chris, just watching them run, watching them move around. I think it's kind of interesting. All 5 guys have a different skill set, like a unique skill set that is their own. Yet at the same time, I watch them all move, and I'm like, even the ones I wouldn't call like the fastest of the group, I'm like, I mean, they can still run. Like, it's like they're different players, but at the same time, they all kind of have those baseline qualities you're looking for from an SEC receiver, and that they can track the football, they can run, they can move around. It's just maybe their sliders are up. One guy's a little bit different than the other. So let's go out there. We got Wellbaum here joining us live from Tampa, getting ready for the Final Four. Chris, thank you for taking the time, man. I know there's a lot going on. South Carolina, Texas, Part 4. What can you tell us about this matchup this time that has not been said the other times?
I don't know if there is anything left that hasn't been said already. The teams really know each other pretty well at this point. Nobody expects any surprises tomorrow. Both teams kind of, most teams, you are what you are at this point in the season, but especially these two, just that there's shouldn't be any surprises tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, because that's the question we asked earlier. You might have already answered it, but if you want to expand, is there anything either of these teams can do that's new or wrinkled? Like Dick Schaefer and Dawn Staley, they know each other very well. These teams have already played 3 times. They know each other. I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of seems like you tip the ball up and you go play, right?
The only thing that Texas could do that would surprise me is to come out and start launching threes. And I really don't think that's going to happen. But I think that's the only thing that's sort of a wild card, because in the SEC tournament, South Carolina just said all 5 players keep 1 foot in the paint on defense. They're not going to shoot threes, and they're not going to make threes. And there's no way to get South Carolina out of that defense except to shoot threes, but that's not what Texas does.
Chris, I know you've written about a lot of stuff this week. I've encouraged everybody, go check it out on GamecockCentral.com. You can read about every storyline you can think of. But one thing that I think we're all kind of waiting to see is, are we going to see the A game from this South Carolina women's basketball team? I think we thought we were starting to see it at the end of the regular season, but for whatever reason, since the NCAA tournament has started, they have played well enough to win against whoever they were playing. But I don't think anybody would argue that we've seen the A game or maybe even the B+ game. So what? I mean, I know it's an unanswerable question until we just see what happens tonight. But any thoughts on that entire concept?
Yeah, I mean, the team we saw in Greenville at the SEC tournament was definitely good enough to win a national championship. And the thing about it was South Carolina wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary during that weekend. They were just playing up to their potential and doing what they're capable of. So I think everyone thought they just kind of figured it out at that point. And then we get into the NCAA tournament and they're not doing it anymore. And no one seems to have an explanation for why. They're a little passive. They're tight. I feel like they're turning down a lot of decent shots that normally they would take. And against Duke, they've just decided they weren't going to rebound for the entire third quarter. So the encouraging thing, I think, is that, like I said, the team that was so good that we saw their A game in Greenville, they can definitely do that. It's not like they suddenly started hitting shots or, some ninth player off the bench suddenly was scoring 15 points a game. They were just playing up to their potential. I think the break helps, having basically a week off between games. They were definitely tired by the Elite Eight. When we went in for open locker room between games, everybody was yawning and slumped over in their locker and trying to catch a nap. So the break definitely was much needed for them. Nobody shot well in Birmingham. No team shot well. Not just South Carolina shot horribly, but everybody shot poorly. So maybe you can be optimistic that was something to do with the arena, with the setting, and those shots will start falling again. But we'll find out here in about what time is it? We're in about 4 hours and 20 minutes. We should have an idea what South Carolina team is showing up.
Well, Welly, I mean, we won't get a chance to talk to you again until the whole enchilada is done, right? Between tonight and Sunday. And so, we all feel like every team is capable of winning this thing who's left. Nobody's here by fluke, by accident. Who do you feel like is the front runner right now? Like, out of these four teams, is there one that you're like, is there a mild surprise if anybody but this team wins?
I think that's UCLA. They are the most talented, deepest team. They have the best player with Lauren Betts.
Yeah.
They really don't have any weaknesses on the floor. The biggest question mark with them is just they've never been here before.
Yeah.
And it's the entire Final Four weekend is a different animal for everyone, coaches, players, everyone. There's truth to the fact that experience matters. Even as simple as just shoot-arounds are weird because you're sharing the arena. The practice schedule is weird. UCLA practiced. Texas had the weirdest schedule yesterday. They practiced at 10 a.m. and then had to sit around for 4 hours waiting for their press conferences. But it's when you're counting on UCLA's inexperience to trip them up, that's you're asking for something out of your control to stop them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think they're the favorites.
Chris, I always think it's fascinating when ESPN.com National puts out like the top 15 players that are left playing. And I feel like they always struggle with where to put South Carolina players because it's just we know it's not that one dominant girl, but any given night, a Carolina player is capable of being on par with whoever you could put on that list. They had Chloe as the highest sort of ranked Gamecock at this point at 5th overall of the teams of the players still playing. Who is the most important Gamecock these final 2 games? Is it Chloe Kitts or is it somebody else?
You can definitely make an argument for Chloe just because she's been playing so well in this tournament. She got benched against NC State in the semifinal last year because she was not playing well, and she used that for motivation, turned around and had a double against Iowa. And I asked her yesterday if she remembered that. She said it doesn't motivate her, but she definitely remembered that game and getting benched. So she might be the only one who's been playing her A game here in the tournament. South Carolina's going to need her to be effective to counter the long arms and tall bodies of Kyla Luedecke and Taylor. Fulwiley is the other one that you don't know when she's going to go off, like she did against Maryland. Pow's due to hit some shots. Tessa only had one shot attempt against Duke. She's due to knock down some shots and make some plays. So you never quite know. And sometimes what happens, like Joyce has been struggling, but on the flip side, Chloe and Fagan have been playing so well that Joyce is not getting back in the game after she sits down because you're riding the hot hand.
Yeah, no doubt. Chris, man, we appreciate the coverage as always. I want to encourage, again, everybody out there to check it out on GamecockCentral.com. And we look forward to reading about whatever happens this weekend. I'm sure it's going to be entertaining regardless of whatever it is. So we appreciate you taking the time, man. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, it's Chris Wellbaum. Y'all go check out his complete coverage live from Tampa with the Final Four on GamecockCentral.com. Chris, we're closing this thing out, man. Want to encourage everybody again. Come on down, watch the game today. If you're catching us live right now and it's Friday, or if you're catching us on the kind of after the fact podcast version, if it's Saturday, hopefully that means the Gamecocks are playing in the championship and you still have time to come down and check out, watch the game on Sunday. So, dude, we've got the distillery right behind us. That's where the magic happens, right? Beautiful bar setting, beautiful place to sit, hang out, big screen TVs. Great food. We tried
sliders.
The sliders
Deviled eggs
were amazing. The fried deviled eggs. Don't forget that part.
Say,
I'd never had fried deviled eggs before. I'm gonna have to add them to the.
It's on the list now.
The Thanksgiving dinner or Thanksgiving lunch. But yeah, shout out to our friends here at Steel Hands Vista for inviting us down here. And dude, great place to, whether you're coming for the game or just you want to hang out and have some great beverages. Awesome place to do it.
Yeah, great spot. Come out, food, drink, great people, great spot. Right here in the heart of the Vista. Fun times. Appreciate them having us.
Yep, and appreciate y'all for joining us here. We're going to get out of here. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy finding out what South Carolina women's basketball is going to do. We'll see what happens with baseball. And we'll be back early next week to talk about whatever has happened. And we'll continue spring football as well. Once again, shout out to our sponsors. Shout out to our guy, ClintHammond.com. Shout out to Palmetto Golf and Belts and PalmettoGolfing.com, correct?
That's right.
And y'all have a great weekend. Beautiful weather out. Go enjoy it. He's Chris. I'm Wes. We'll see y'all soon.